All right, guys, welcome back. This is going to be a part five. Um, we'll call this a part five. This is going to be a quick one. And the reason why I'm calling a part five is I want to talk to you guys about logs. And you're gonna know today's the 18th of December, 2024, and I want you guys to kind of um you're going to see the logs. You're going to see logs a lot used a lot in MECM and within Intune. And I want you guys to kind of um, understand, what are they, and what are they, and where they're located, right? So location is key. There are five different logs that I use in MMCM, SCCM, MECM. And the five logs that you want to talk about are common, most common, and mostly used are your client, your server, your management point. So these are the top five logs that are commonly most used. Now, within a client, obviously, once you have the client installed on the client, you're going to go to your C drive, your CCM, and your logs file. Those are the logs. Those are the logs that are there for you to view. But in the server logs, it's sort of what I want to talk to you guys a little bit about today, the management report log. So 2, 3, 4, and 5 are the most important logs that I want to talk about. Client logs are easy. They're there for you to view, obviously, when you have your CCM files. So when you're going into your C drive, so within our, um, see if we can open up see if we have the CCM installed on this one. I know there was some errors, but again, if I type this in, I go to Windows, I don't have the CCM here. So a little bit of an issue with that. I might have to reinstall it. But again, if you were to go to one of the machines, let's see on this one here, right? And hopefully this has it. If not, then I won't be able to show you that part. But our main concern is the server logs, right? The management logs, the server log. So this one also doesn't have it, but it's okay. Again, this is the location that you're going to find this. So you're opening up the CCM folder, and then within the CCM folder, you have your logs file, and those are all your logs that you're going to be looking for. Um, right, so you're going to be looking for those logs, right, when you're running the control. Let's see if we can find your control here. Right here, SMS config. Right, remote control. So again, the SCCM. Yeah, see, you don't components. Um, So as you can see, again, you'll have the SCCM console installed, and within the logs folder of your CCM C Windows. So you go to C, this PC, local disk C, Windows, and then your CCM folder. Now in this one, you have your CCM cache and your CCM setup, but I don't have it here to show you. But again, that's the location that you're gonna want to look for it. Now, there are CCM setup logs, and these are CCM setup logs that are used when you're installing the CCM setup logs, right? So these are the different logs that you're gonna use, and obviously when it's exiting with a return code 0, means that uh, the CCM client is installed on the computer, right? And we're also looking at the task manager. Obviously, you'll see the CCM setup. When you go to your details, you'll see, you go down to CCM, uh, CCM setup, you'll see it here. So you'll see the CCM exec and the CCM setup and stuff. So once you see that, you should be good to go. Um, that's the client side. Remember, it's the client side, right? We also have the server side in our MEC MPS and our secondary sites. Those are also important too. So when we're looking at those, we have our server logs. So let's go ahead and open up the server log. on our server site. So within our MECMPS, so within our MECMPS, I'm going to copy and paste that, right? And then hit enter. These are the different logs, as you could see, that are obviously part of our logs that are given to you when um, you have your MECM's PS server installed, or throughout the throughout the architecture, the design, and whatnot, when you're adding your site server roles and wherever you're adding your logs and your updates and whatnot, and your stat logs, your inbox manager, your site comps, your outbooks monitor, your offer manager, your SMS, DP usage, your consent, AD. This is all AD force discovery. So your discovery logs as well too are part of that. You have all your discovery logs, your system discovery logs, your user discovery, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Your BG logs, your BGB manager logs, your business app work processor logs, your CCM log, change manager log, your CMG network worker logs with date and time. So this is where all the logs are. That's the location of that log. We also have our management point logs, and our management point logs are located in our SMS underscore SCCM SMS underscore CCM configuration manager logs. So we're going to go back to our C drive, our SMS, okay, paste, right? And then we're going to hit enter. So as you can see, we're not able to find this because it looks like this isn't installed within our C drive. So and that is our management point logs. Our management point logs, um, so again, those management point logs are crucial for troubleshooting and understanding the operations, right? So you want to make sure that um, again, these logs, these management point logs, again, my apologies, I think I typed it in wrong, but these are located in our program file logs. So this is in our program files, my apologies. So you'll see that located in that program, oops. So we're gonna relocate that, and again, those are crucial for troubleshooting and understanding operations and communications of your management point, right? Your MP. They're located on the server where the role is installed. So wherever the role is installed in this case it's our MEC MPS, and this is the location. There are some key logs that we'll find in that directory, and again, you'll find like the location, the policy, the relay, registration, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what I'll do is I'll post some examples for you within here, and we'll review those lightly. We'll review those in the management point log. So I'll put that underneath here for us to take a look at. I want you guys to um, note where that is located, because it is important, right? So especially when we're looking for those logs, right? There you go. And I'm going to make this just a little bit bigger, and you guys will see the show. So again, the MECM, the management report logs are crucial for understanding the management report, right? So these logs, um, okay. So let me go ahead and refresh this. So these are located in the SMS logs location, and I'm going to show you that where they are. And again, once we go there, we'll find the different MP logs and what those MP logs are in terms of what they do and what requests they have. So if we go to our program files, we're going to go to our program files. Right, and I'm going to locate that. I'm going to hit enter. And there you have it. These are the different logs that we have, or some of the MP logs. So we're going to locate all the logs in that are here, the MP logs. So anything to do with MP. So we're going to search for MP logs, MP. All right. And anything to do with the client registry, the framework, the GEF log. And this is all located within here. And these are some of the key logs that you'll find. And again, these provide information about, you know, whatever's happening in the management point, like operations. Anything that would help us diagnose, you know, would help diagnose issues. Related to like communication of a client, policy requests, inventory, hardware inventory, and many more, right? Just to make sure that you have the appropriate permissions, because that is important when you're accessing these logs on the server management point. So these are very, very important, like all these logs here, as you can see, all these logs. So these are some of the logs here that I want you guys to make note of. Just gonna take a snapshot of that. We'll add that to our log file. So these are some of the logs that I want you guys to take a look at. These are very important logs, especially for that aspect of it. Okay. Just gonna synchronize this, and I'm going to okay, done. And again, I'm gonna add that here. There you go. So again, these are the specific logs that I want you guys to take a look at when it comes to the management point. We also have our configuration manager console logs. And again, this location is where you're going to find the configuration manager console logs. Now, we don't use, well, there are locations like there are many locations where we're going to find it. But again, once we're going into that location, you'll notice that. Let me go ahead and copy that link here again. Copy that link. I'm going to paste the link, right click and press enter. And I'm going to take this out, console, right? And hit enter. And this should be C drive, program 86. Um, um, endpoint manager, which I don't see. Admin console. And then we're looking at admin. Okay, there we go. So this is actually an old version, but this one is called configuration. Right? So I'm going to make changes of that. And again, when we look at that, we have the different logs here, like our extension log and our SMSU. And this is where we're going to find the different logs for that and any changes that we need for that aspect. Okay. We also have our IIS logs, and again, if you guys know what IIS is, um, we have it installed as a role, so we should be able to open up the manager. And this is our application server manager for IIS 10, right? We have our page here, and to locate that page, we would go to our C drive, and I'm going to take a picture of this. Let's take a look at that. That's the location. Okay, and we're going to open that. I'm going to paste that. I'm going to paste it here. There you go. So again, we're looking at the INET pub, and when we look at the INET pub, we're going to open up our console, right? And once we open up our console, you'll see the INET pub here, and then you'll see our logs file, and our logs file, and then our W3SCV. So this is the location for that, and that's where that's located. So I'm going to go ahead and post that and give you sort of an understanding of where the location is and how to find those locations. This is just some sort of similar location, but just to kind of give you guys an example of some visibility on that and see how that works, right? So this is your IIS, right? Just make sure you have the IIS role installed on your server. If not, then you won't see that. We're going to talk about, how logs work in Management Configuration Manager. And these are some great questions that we're going to ask, right? We like to ask. And again, we know our locations, right? So that's a positive note. We also need to know what each log location does and why we use it, right? So how it works. In most processes, the configuration manager writes operational information to a log file that is dedicated to that process, right? So again, it's writable. It's writable. So it'll write it into a text file or a log file or whatever log or text. Usually it's a text file. We can open it, or we can open it up as CM trace. So we can open it up. We can read this as a notepad file in notepad plus plus Visual Studio or CM Trace, right? So CM Trace is our tool, which is what we use within. So typically we would use this, but by default, so this is by default. Right? So by default, this is where we would read it, right? Right? Or we can change the default, but we're not going to do that. But again, once we were able to open up our main logs, right? And our main logs are our server logs, right? So we're opening up our main server logs. Its location for server side logs are yeah, right? So we're going to open up that log file and we're going to identify I want you guys to identify the log files by .logs and .logs. And this is what we're going to see, right? We're going to see that as soon as I open that up. So I'm going to open up in our MECM primary site server. I'll open up the log. I'm going to open up C drive, program files, Microsoft Configuration Manager, logs. Right? And these are the specific logs. And as you can see, you'll see a .last error. You'll see a .backup. You'll see even .backups. You'll see a .log LO underscore file, and you'll see a .log file. But again, what is that? Like, what are these? Like, why do you see most of these? Like, why are these split up into log files and underscore lows, right? And right errors and last errors and backs, right? These are typical log files that you guys are going to see. But again, why, right? So these are the logs that you're going to see. And again, when the log is full, right? So when the log is full, and this is important. Actually, I'm going to put this here because this is important to note before we talk about size, right? So when the log is full, the log file is copied to the same name, but with a .lo extension. There's no difference in that name, but it is its extension. And the process or components continues to write that .log file. So what happens is, hey, if the log is full and reaches its max size, and I'll get to the size limit as itself, that processor component continues to write to that log file. Simple. Just data that's continued to run, right? And write. It's writable data that we're able to now read as as writing or hexadecimal numbers or error code, right? So that's what that is. Now, when the log file reaches its maximum size, and we'll get to that size again, the .lo file is overwritten and the process repeats. So it keeps going and going and going, right? So similar to that aspect. So the more data that's coming in, the more information that's being written, the more the data keeps writing itself, right? And the more um, writable operational information is to that log file is dedicated to that process. So whatever process happens, the more it's gonna read, it's gonna write to that log, right? And then so that we're able to read it. When the log file reaches it max file, yeah, the log file is overwritten and the process repeats. So it's over and over again. It keeps going and going and going. And I showed you guys in that picture here, and I'll take a picture of it again. For you guys to take a note of some sort of idea here, of give you an idea of different logs, the different logs that are there, right? You know, and you'll see, and you'll note the sizes. You'll note the different sizes. You'll note the different log files for this one and this one. You'll note the different sizes that it's allowed to give. And again, this one as well too. This is the last known error file. We also have .back files, right? Backup files. And you'll notice these timestamp ones too as well. So that's a little bit, that's something different that I've we have our system discovery logs, our user discovery logs, and AD, right? So if you guys want to know what that is, if I were to minimize that and open our administration and go to our discovery methods, these are the different logs for that, for system, for user, network, heartbeat, group, and force, right? So that's where those logs are located, and those logs obviously are, they get bigger in size as you go further and further into the process of adding information, right, and writing information. So and adding more data and more metadata to the concept. So that's what that is. Here, let me push this out of the way, minimize that, and I'm going to put that in my notes as a good understanding of how this works, right? And again, configuration manager writes to a log file until the log file read, and we know that, right? So 1 byte, as you can see, they're in kilobytes, right? So 1 byte is equal to 0.01 kilobytes. 1 kilobyte is equal to 1024 bytes. Now, for example, if we have 250,000 bytes, we have 250 kilobytes. If we have 2,000 kilobytes, we have 2 megabytes. So think of it as a 2 megabyte limit. But again, why is it 2 megabyte limit? Again, this is by default, right? Like when the maximum log file grows in size, right? That log grows to a specific size, and in this case, it's in kilobytes, and the server renames it as a historical file and creates a new file. That default value is 250,000 bytes. And again, that historical file is known as your LO extension. Right? So understand, sorry, the log file, once there's a log is a historical file, there's the log file, right? So our historical file would be the log file, right? Right. So I'm going to close that, which is our historical file, right? So that's our historical log. So that's what that is, right? And it is important to note because, when the log file reaches its maximum size, the server renames it as a backup and creates a new log file, right? So you'll see that it'll rename it as a .back and then create that new file for you, right? So the level of detail to write logs, again, we have verbose, we have default, we have warnings and errors, and we have errors only, right? So we're able to also tell it what values we want, right? As just a log file that just with verbose lines, with default lines, warnings and errors, and warning and errors only, right? So we're allowed to change that level and give it that level of detail to write to the log files, right? So we also have log viewer tools, and again, all Microsoft Configuration Manager log files are plain text, obviously, or hexadecimal numbers, so that we can view them with any text reader. And like I said, Notepad, and again by default, right? And um, those logs are unique to formatting the best viewed. That's best viewed with one of the following specialized tools. So these are the specialized tools. And I've already mentioned the following here. I've already talked about that. And we've already talked about that. But again, you can read more up on it with this log here when you have some time and take a look at it. That's in other editions. We talked about that. In MECM, the maximum size of the log files is determined by the individual log file settings. So by default, most logs in Configuration Manager log files are set to 2 MB. When the log, and then like I said, when the log file reaches its size, it's renamed to a log file .log .back, and then the new log file .log is created. So you'll see that concept happen a lot. If you do see a back file, it's just probably still trying to create that new log file, or something happens, so you can troubleshoot that, or just remove the log back and rename it to .log, like log file one .log, so that while you keep the log.back in place for troubleshooting. Okay, so that's important to note. We can change the log file size to 2 MB, and I'll show you guys how to do that. And again, in rotation, this rotation helps manage the disk space usage and ensures that logs are kept manageable. So we can customize the max size specific log files by modifying the configuration settings in the SMS agent host service registry, right? And that is important. Or by using configuration files for certain components. And I will show you a few ways how to do it that I find are good. And again, this is for client logs. I don't have a client log to look at in the registry. I won't be able to find this. But in this location, we're looking for the max. I see I don't have that log available to show you, but just make sure that this is in the client machine and has an active client, right? So we're going to look for these values, and I'll make sure that you guys have a copy of this, as it's important for you guys to take a look at, right? We can modify these log file keys and set the values in bytes, or we can also do it via, uh, you know, setting it to like 4 MB or 5 MB, whatever we want, right? But there's also another way we can do it. And another way is I find very useful. It's called the Configuration Manager Service Manager. What is that? So the maximum log file sizes for servers can be configured via the SMS SCCM site control file. This is a new word that not a lot of, it's not highly talked about, but again, using the Configuration Manager Service Manager um, is the easiest way to do it. So what I want you guys to do is open up we can adjust the maximum log size, and I'll show you guys how to do that. And here's a picture of me doing it here and I can actually change this file name and location and size to that, so that we can, if there is issues with the log file and we're noticing that the log isn't working, we can change that as a troubleshooting step to say, hey, let's change it to 4 MB, for example, and then rerun the executive service and see if there's anything or any of the logs or the SMS agent host or any of the SMS agents within our services.msc console, and then see if that helps with running the logs again, right? So you might see some logs stuck 3 days ago and nothing has happened, right? So this is a good point of troubleshoot or contact to kind of look at the components within the configuration manager component login, and that way our SMS executive, we can actually create enable the log for that. If there isn't a log, we can change the location, right? So in this case, the location would be in our diagram. We can have our location as logs F, right? So we would change that to F, and that's what I want you guys to do, is to change that to your F drives, right? So right here, make a circle here, right? So we have our logs here. So that's actually important to note, because we're not typically saving it to our C drive, right? So in our diagram that I showed you guys, I want you guys to change that to F, right? And I want you to change the size in MB. So the size in MB, as we noted here, is 2 megabytes. I want you guys to give it 4 megabytes or up to 5 megabytes, right? So I want you guys to change that to 5 megabytes. Okay. Typically, it sets, you can set the maximum log file to 4 or 3 or 2 or 5 or up to 5 or 5 MB, right? But again, that's totally up to you. I would just change it up to 5. That way you have it. And again, to change the log size, we're going to change the log size to 5120 KB and change the maximum log files to 5, right? So that's what we're going to do with the site control file. So I'm going to show you how to do that, right? And the way to do that, is to install the configuration manager server. Now, it's included with our MECM console. You don't need to install it separately. It's obviously included. We just need to make sure that we have our console installed. You can download it from our MECM site server if you haven't done it already. We need to have the console installed. If the console is not installed, we won't be able to do it. So I want you to open up the MECM console, then go to our monitoring, and then status, and then click on component. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And I'm going to make this a right and left situation, so that way, right, so I'm going to make this a little bit smaller so that's readable. Okay, there we go. So again, what I want you guys to do is I want you to open up your MECM console, right? So I'm going to open up the MECM console, right? And then within our MECM console, I'm going to navigate to the monitoring section. And within our monitoring section, we're going to open up and crack open our system status. Now that system status has our conflicting records, our status message queries, etc., component statuses, and so forth. So what I want you to do is, once we've expanded the site system status, we're going to open up the client component statuses. So on the left side, you'll have 72 items there of all our component statuses, right? So within our component statuses, on the right-hand side, we're going to click Start on the top. So as you can see, the components here, we can show all, right? We'll make sure we show all, right? For, let's say, for the last month, we'll go full out, and that way, oh, I don't want to see that. These are just specific logs. So I want you to press, so what we're going to do is, once we have that open, at the top here, you'll notice the Start button. Okay, what does that mean? Or you can obviously locate the SMS executive log and, and click on Start in the components to open up the configuration manager. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to click on the configuration manager service, configuration manager service manager. This is where we want to start that service so that we're able to now change the log size and log file and the desired number of log files, right? So if we don't have our service or don't have our service, and again, this has to be as an admin, right? We don't have our, uh, if we don't, sorry, if we don't have our site connected, or in this case, our site is connected, right? We should then see our components and our servers, right? So if we don't have it, we would go to component, sorry, site, and then we would go to connect, and then we would type in our 3-digit code. In this case, my 3-digit code is INC. Now, I don't really need to do that, but this is how you would sign into that. Now, once that's done, once we've entered the site code that we want to configure and the server name, we will click OK. Now, we need to select the component part of it. Now, in the configuration manager server manager window, we're going to expand the site code name, which is what we did here. We're going to expand that. All right, we're going to expand the node, site code node, and select the component for which we want to adjust the log file. So in this case, we're going to adjust the SMS executive log. So how do we do that? So we're going to click on component, and we're going to look for the SMS executive. So I'm going to left click on that, right? Now, to adjust the log file and number of log files, after selecting the component, so I've selected the component, I click on the properties button. I'm just going to press the login. I'm going to click on login. So so properties, right? So here's the properties button, right? So as you can see, um, so as you can see, here's so I have to click on the actual thing here first. So what I'm going to do is locate the sorry, right? And then click on properties for that. So, so that's the log settings. We're able to see the number of warning errors, messages, informational messages for the SMS executive. And it looks like critical messages we're only able to see 5. Now we can adjust the log size file, right? And in the component window, and then going back to the component window, right, for SMS, right? And if I go to components and I go to executive and I go to login, I can now change. I can go to the login tab and adjust the log file size to KB, right? Or MB. So for this case, I want to change it to 5. So let's change this to 5 MB, which is our top level, right? And we're going to change our location to F, right? So in this case, I want you guys to change this to F. Remember our diagram, and I talked about this earlier on a couple minutes back, and I want you to note that you guys are going to have your servers here, your logs. So your logs are going to, you know, be part of the F drive where your installation is your E drive, right? Not your C drive. In my case, it's C drive, but in your case, I want it as an F drive, right? So I want you guys to change that to that. So what I did was I'm moving these logs, right? The SMS executive log to my F drive. Okay. And now I'm going to hit OK. Okay. I'm then going to apply those changes and click OK to save the changes, right? Now I need to verify those changes. I can verify these changes by clicking on the log files for the component. So the new log file and size should reflect your changes. So if we go back to our log file, I'm going to refresh. I just want to refresh. So if I go back to my F drive, I should have my SMS executive log, right? And then you'll note that the file size and number of log files should reflect the changes. And again, this will happen as it continues to grow. It'll continue to go up to 5. Now I can set this, like I said, I set this up as 5 megabytes right now. I can change this eventually. I just need to remember the general guidelines, right? So the actual UI might vary slightly depending on your MECM version. So just adjusting the log files carefully and considering our storage capacity is important, right? So just remember you must have um, uh, permissions in order to do that as well too. But again, that's where you would want to do that, and our SMS executive logs will be moved and changed there. This is important, guys. This is really, really important to understand how this works and how this really goes. So understanding the logs is important, especially when you want to read them, where they're located, what each log does, if it's a client or server log, our management point, right? We talk about the different logs, and if we review these different logs, again, to review, let's review this, right? Let's review, right? So let's review a little bit, right? And in order to review what we talked about, so you know, right? So if we were to review what we talked about, we did talk about logs and how the logs works and the different types of logs. We also talked about log extensions, right? Different log extensions like .log, .lo underscore .log, .backup, right? And then when there's .log, .back, right? Which is your backup file. So these extensions are important when you're going in. And again, by default, by default, our log size is 2 MB, right? We can change this log size as required and change its location. So it is important to note that, right? Based on our design, right? So by design, we can change this, right? If we need to change this. And sometimes, yeah, we do see logs that don't update itself and maybe it's missing space and that could be the case, right? So, we should be able to review that and talk about that because that is important, right? And we're able to note that. And again, um, it is important, right? When you do that. So make note of that. And again, understand the differences between each log and what each log does, right? So again, I want to thank you guys and the different tools that we use to open the logs, right? So we also talked about that. Talked about different tools used to read the logs, right? So understand that again. The UI might slightly depend on that version, right? So you have to kind of understand how this stuff works and how to open these logs and where to open up these logs and how to read these logs. Because again, these are logs that are important, right? So knowing how to read those logs are detrimental to troubleshooting any issue that might arise in your troubleshooting careers, right? So again, when we're looking at the logs here, right? And let's open up this. Let's just open up this, for example. So here's an example of the logs. So being able to read the logs is also important, right? So if we're looking at, the date that it started from the 3rd, right? Right. So this is the executive that started the 81st discovery manager, right? So we can continue to locate the different, again, through the components, right? And enter the function thread main and enter function seed active directory initialize, right? So um, kind of understand what each line does and how each line is read. And by default, it's read. In this case, I open this log to open as as a log tool. So I want to open as a CM trace log tool. So my configuration manager log trace tool, which is a little bit easier to read logs, especially when you're reading the logs. So, kind of understand how that works, right? Um, and the further down I go, the more I can read the current timestamps, right? And note the timestamps and the issues that happen. So in this case, if I go to today's date, I can start today is the 18th, right? So I could say, hey, I started that log troubleshooting at 10 a.m., right? Or just by whatever default I wanted to run. So in this case, if I go to um, discovery methods and I go to properties, the schedule runs every week, right? So for that schedule that runs every week, and I think it's for, what was it that I opened? I opened up the forest discovery. So if I open up the forest discovery and I right click on the properties, right? So I have it every 7 days, which enables it. And again, I can force this to run right now, right? And I'll have this open here at the same time. And I'll just say yes. So that kind of, this should read. Um, the force discovery should read. There you go. So you'll see that it read. It started that service, right? Once I refreshed it, and that'll keep going. And it'll run all the metadata that it needs to run, beginning functions and threads and components, and it'll continue to go through that. So that'll kind of run that in a couple seconds, right? As you can see, and it finished running the Active Directory discovery thread. Again, we know that the server belongs to the force, so we're trying to discover force names here in this case, right? It tries to update the FQDN if there were any all site systems associated with the site code INC, right? So that kind of does that, and it runs all the GMT dates, ISTR numbers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this will request the discovery run. As you can see, this requested at that time, and then it'll enter the function report. It'll raise the discovery success status line, right? In which we discovered one site, which is my site, which is Italian Computers Inc.2.local. And it calls the status keys, gets the messages for that. Again, it enters the function, right? Right, for the forced all site systems. And again, these are all functions that are calling, right? And the more you click on, the more you can actually see these. And again, you can take this and Google this if you want and read through each line to see where something went wrong, right? So again, all I had to do was go here and then right click and run the for, and that'll kind of force the discovery method rather than wait 7 days, right? So in this case, you can change that to days, hours, and weeks, right? Or you can automatically create uh, site boundaries when they discover. Again, this is all done by design and so forth. And I can just refresh that. So again, I I want to again, I want to thank you. I want to leave this up to you guys for questions. Please feel free to message me on WhatsApp, uh, right, at +1 647 987 1339. Um, Add me to the group, and the group is located on the description of the YouTube video. And when you are messaging me, please, please, please don't just add your like. I, I need to know who you are. I've had some weird requests. I don't know who you are, so I need to know your first name, your last name, what your country code, what's your country location, where you're from. What do you like about this video? What are your long-term goals when using SCCM and MECM? Are you working with MECM? Are you working with MECM? Right? If so, what company, you know, questions about the assignments, like what are your long-term goals, right? So questions about the assignments. I want you guys to try this out on your own, add snapshots into a Word document or PDF location, right? Show me what you guys are able to find, right? And when you're able to, you know, open this and change your location and see how that works. As you could see, I was able to change the location for that. And if I go to my log files, and there's my log files, and this can grow and grow and grow up to 5 MB, and I can change that, which is kind of cool. So I want you guys to do that. Send it to me, email me, and again, hope this was informative. If you have any questions or comments, again, please feel free to message me. Okay. I hope you guys have a great rest of the day. And again, thank you very much. I'm just going to close all this stuff down. And I'm going to end the video here now. And I want to thank you guys for your time. Thanks again.